Welcome to Season 1 of The Chris Hanna Show, where we're going all in on how to improve your impact, your productivity, and performance. Today's podcast is brought to you by Evolving Management. Isn't it about time that companies and leaders rethink and evolve their approach to managing? Visit evolvingmanagement.com for featured content, blogs, manager toolkits, coaching solutions, and more. That's evolvingmanagement.com. Welcome to another episode of The Chris Hanna Show. Today we're talking about one of my favorite topics, and that is challenging the status quo. Early on in my career, I realized that if I wanted my teams to be successful, we needed to stop doing things the same old way that they've always been done and try and achieve different results. And it came down to challenging the status quo. Complacency is something that afflicts so many different people. Whether we just get stuck in doing the same old routine, doing things the same way that we've always done them, or we're just way too comfortable, many struggle with shaking things up. These same people and organizations often struggle with change that's happening all around them. To be more resilient, everyone needs to focus on stepping outside of their comfort zone. I always find that the most exemplary leaders are the ones who are associated with challenging the status quo. They awaken new possibilities, and they pursue new opportunities for their team and for their business. I honestly believe that both leadership and challenging the process are inseparable. You can't be successful as a leader unless you're willing to change things and shake it up and do something that's different. Change always opens up all kinds of new, exciting possibilities. It's much better to try something than to do nothing as well. Plus, it's way more fun when you can drive a bunch of change and challenge something. Whether it's people, it's processes, it's tools, there are tons of opportunities for leaders to look at ways to improve. And it's better to really double down on what's working well and take a hard look at what isn't and change that. And that's where I think really challenging the status quo comes into play. I challenge new leaders to pick a characteristic that they want to be known for. Early on in my career, I realized I wanted to be seen as someone who could challenge the status quo. That's the characteristic I wanted to be known for. I believe that if I could always focus on driving change, that would lead to a tremendous amount of innovation, new ideas, new ways of performing, better customer experience, and ultimately a better employee experience. Becoming associated with challenging the status quo really led to the teams that I led and myself being seen as people who would always drive continuous improvement. It not only opened up new opportunities for me over the years, but it also helped to lead to new processes and tools being replaced that were outdated or in bad need of being tweaked or adjusted. Look, if you can challenge the status quo, it can help in a variety of different ways. Most people are happy to point out when there's problems, but quite a few struggle with actually coming up with solutions to solve an issue. The culture that you really want to create within your organization or within your team is one where you are trying to not just point out a problem, you're also coming with recommendations for possible solutions. By ensuring that team members can take on an approach like this, or finding a problem and then coming up with a solution, it can give people opportunities for development. The more that people are starting to look at different challenges and tools as opportunities that can be challenged, the more that a culture can really start to gravitate towards that ongoing method of continuous improvement. It's all about getting better, incrementally, right? Getting better and better over time is what it's all about. It's progress over perfection. But I'm not going to lie that sometimes challenging the status quo is tricky for some people. There's many people who don't like or feel uncomfortable with change. But someone who was recently, say, promoted to leading a team needs to look at how they evaluate that team before they look to introduce tons of change and really disrupting that status quo. Because too much change early on in someone's tenure can actually cause the group to feel like there are too many issues with stability. With a lack of stability, it's going to be tougher for people to adopt any change or any efforts to make things better. But after an appropriate amount of time, you'll find that you can build up a certain amount of trust. And it's more effective to start tweaking the team, the structure, the tools, the processes, really to match the vision what I like to really advocate for is ultimately the small build, small wins approach. Ultimately, this is about making a straightforward change followed up by a more significant change over time and so on and so forth. With the slow build approach, the more wins that you can generate, the more momentum you eventually have. If you can start to be seen as someone who's generating a lot of wins, more likely that the team is going to believe in you when you start to make bigger changes down the road. You ultimately want to start to determine, what do you need to do when it comes to changes with your group or your organization? How can you test the waters to determine what approach works and which one doesn't? There are things you are going to need from your people, but if you want to be seen as a multiplier where you're able to start to generate momentum and see progress in others, you're going to need to make sure that any sort of challenge to any process is actually seen as being effective. In a lot of the content that I produce, I talk a lot about leadership. And one of the quotes that I think you'll see most paraphrased is that the best leaders are those learners. Whether it's reading books, watching videos, consuming content such as a blog, or hearing people speak at conferences, or even listening to something like this, like a podcast. It's important to know that leaders are passionate about growing and developing themselves. So when someone starts to challenge the status quo, it's because they've actually broken the mold and started to come up with new ideas. They have learned new ideas and figured out, this works for this person and this works for another, and I'm going to build it into my own style. And that is where the really true value can come from, just continually learning. I think a big part of actual personal development is pushing yourself beyond your boundaries and stepping outside of your comfort zone to try and get things done too. When you start to challenge processes, it's important to remember that you need to try different things. To ultimately become more self-aware as a leader, as an individual contributor, or just even as a human being, you need to understand what you like and what you dislike. Sometimes you're going to need to step outside of your comfort zone and try new activities and see if that is something that you want to continue to do. And that's all about breaking that mold and challenging the status quo. It's important to try new things to understand what you like and what you hate. Lastly, I want to note that it's important to be uncomfortable. It's actually a good thing. There are many people who are frustrated with where they're at in life, but they don't do anything about it. It's important to challenge what's normal, what the status quo is, break free from whatever's holding you back, and do something different. Sometimes you need to see a different perspective or to try to learn something new so you can continue to move forward. As I said earlier, it's important to think about both life and in business the same way, and that it's really progress over perfection. You got to keep moving, keep growing. The harder you push, the more that momentum will kick in. It's just like lifting weights, as an example. The more you lift, the more that your muscles grow and expand. You might feel some pain and discomfort in the hours and days following a workout, but if you keep at it, you will eventually see the results. The same thing goes with challenging the status quo. If you see an opportunity, do something about it. Step outside your comfort zone, and you'll be exposed to more situations, more people, more opportunities than you ever thought possible. Who knows? You might even find a new activity that you really enjoy and love, or a career that you never thought possible. You've been listening to The Chris Hanna Show. To have me speak at your next event, or for additional solutions to help you achieve more than you thought possible, visit chrishanna.ca today. For other solutions and resources designed to help companies and leaders rethink and evolve their approach to managing, be sure to check out evolvingmanagement.com. Lastly, please remember to subscribe and share to receive the latest episodes wherever you listen to your podcast. We look forward to connecting with you again soon for another episode of The Chris Hanna Show.